with me now.
Welcome again, Gallo Radio Show, SuperTalk, Mississippi. Thanks for being with us on this Thursday morning as we broadcast from the Mississippi Trademark for MEC's Capital Day, 2025 Capital Day. Got a lot going on. Political officials here, statewide elected officials, also legislators are going to be here later in the day. Governor is going to have a Q&A starting at 9 o'clock this morning with Scott Waller as kind of the keynote to start things off for the day. And right now, we are joined by the Attorney General in Mississippi, Lynn Fitch. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Great to see you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Hard to believe, 2025, here we are.
I know, and it doesn't slow down once it starts. We get to the start of the new legislative session. How does your job change when the legislature is in session?
Well, we're always excited when they're here. We're very, very supportive. We have a legislative agenda, and I'll tell you, I'm so grateful to our legislature. The legislators have really stood up. They've made a lot of great pieces of legislation become reality. It's really helped us in the Attorney General space, how we can protect women, families, children, criminal justice. Yeah. So it's been really significant, and I'm very grateful for their help and support.
I'm curious, one of the things that I think so many parents are concerned with, and I know it's come across your desk, across your plate, is on your plate, is online bullying issues and wondering, like, it's almost impossible to keep our kids away from evolving technology. And so many kids have got a phone at younger ages, or they've got an Apple Watch or some way to communicate, which means most of them have access to the Internet, and it's kind of a big, bad, ugly world out there. In terms of doing things to protect our children online, where does that start for you?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is significant. It's a scary world out there. Big tech does not mind pushing all of those issues onto our children, and we've got to protect them. I'll tell you, our legislature did an amazing job last year. They passed the Walker-Montgomery Online Privacy Act to protect our children from these predators, these people, these pedophiles that are out there pushing all this to our children. And it's from everything that's affecting our children's mental health, depression, bullying, the things that they are getting our children to think and to do. So with this law, it's been very helpful. It went into effect July 1st in two pieces, two parts of the legislation. The first part was for sextortion. Now, unfortunately, that is happening across our country. It happened in our state, which is how we lost our precious Walker Montgomery, who took his life after being bullied, leveraged by a young girl who actually was not, but it was a company, and it was a situation, and it was so unfortunate. They leveraged young people for money, and they did that with Walker.
You take a teenager who feels like it's the end of the world if they've got to admit to a mistake that they don't want to tell their parents about, or they don't want friends to find out, and it creates this level of anguish and ultimately takes his life.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so sad. But so now we have a new law on sextortion, so we can go after those predators, those evil criminal actors that are going after our children. The second part of that was also to have some parental controls, so that for social media, before your child could get on, it had to be vetted. There had to be some certification that the child was of that age, approval, and so forth. And, of course, that did not go into effect. Immediately, we were sued day one because big tech did not want to see that happen because, again, it's profits over our children. Yeah. And so they would much rather profit and continue to push. So we're in court. We have a Fifth Circuit argument coming up for that very reason. We're going to win because it's ultimately about protecting our children in the future and how we can enable them to live a life and not be put in those compromising situations.
Forgive me if this is a dumb question. Do you still go to the courtroom occasionally to actually present a case or try a case?
I do go to the courtroom.
I know you've got staff of attorneys, and obviously there are a lot of people that are working through the AG's office, but I was curious how often that happens.
Well, we're in certainly all the courts in state. We're in federal. We're in front of the United States Supreme Court. So I'm there as much as I possibly can be with my attorneys, being there supporting them, because it's important to see all of us as a unified front, whether we're protecting the interests of agencies, individuals, the state, whatever the case might be, in our state courts, in our federal courts, and again in front of the Fifth Circuit, our United States Supreme Court.
Yeah. You mentioned legislative agenda. It's funny this time of year as we've talked to different elected officials, like, hey, what's on your radar screen? What's important to you? And everybody has things that are kind of in their corner of the world are really, really important. What are those things for the Attorney General's office this year?
Well, I have a number of issues, and again, I'm so grateful our legislators have been so wonderful about passing legislation because it is impactful. It is a positive. It's powerful to have legislation that, again, is protective of our children, of our victims. So many of those have to do with women, children, and families that I have proposed. One of the things that I'm very interested in, promoting paid maternity leave for state employees.
Okay.
I think that is significant as we recruit and we retain state employees. We're only one of 12 states that does not have paid maternity leave for state employees.
Is that for an extended period of time or at all?
We just don't have it at all in the state of Mississippi. So that is really difficult as you're trying to retain or you're trying to recruit women to be a part of state government. There's some great people, women that we'd love to have to be a part, but they choose not to because they don't have paid maternity leave.
If you are a state employee and you have a baby, you have to take a leave of absence to care for that child immediately after birth. There's not a 2-week or 6-week or...
That is correct. You use your own personal leave, and then if you have no time left, then you move into just taking time off without pay. So I think that is important. Talking back about our parents, too, we've got to have a Parents' Bill of Rights. You as a dad of young children, you need to be able to have the rights and know what your rights are, how to educate, care, and take care of your children. So again, we'll push for that. There are pieces and parts all across, different statutes. I'd like to see that codified because I think that's important for parents as they're moving forward with their children.
What would be part of that?
Well, again, it gives you the opportunity to know what's happening in your child's school. What's the curriculum look like? What are the extracurricular activities? How do you care for your child? Up until last year, and again, the legislature took on this task. You as a parent couldn't find out the medical records of your child if they were over 14 because that young child could make the decision to exclude you from looking at their medical records. So that's been changed. Again, those are parental rights where we need to be protective of our children.
Well, and I mean, the fact of the matter is they are children, and there's a difference in being a child and adult in terms of life experience and knowledge base. And I mean, you view the world differently when you're 14 than when you're 44. I'm just using the example of me. So me at 44, I've got a 14-year-old daughter. She might see something happen, and it feels like it's the end of the world right now. And I'm looking, I'm like, it's not a big deal. It may be a big deal in your world right now, but it's not a big deal. And yet, in a lot of places, they're allowing children to make gender assignment decisions and puberty blockers and all of these things. It really is scary. And like, I don't even understand how there are adults that get to the point where, like, yeah, you know what? It's okay for a 14-year-old to make that decision.
Should never be happening. Again, our legislature stood up. We've stood up in court. We've been able to win and be very victorious. And it is about protecting our children and not letting those forces come in and allow them to make those decisions because, to your point, they're kids.
Yeah.
Should not be happening. I know there's some other great things that are out there that are protective of our children, not only something we're interested in, but many, many people, legislators, about having a strong cell phone policy. Because, again, back to your point, if these children are on their phones all day and and then they've got them in the classroom, who's bullying them? Is there a cyber issue going on? What's happening? Our children are distracted from their learning.
So there are schools that are doing that, right, that have said no phones during school hours at all. Is that something that the legislature should be looking at and should be a state law as opposed to a district-by-district decision?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for the legislature to look at it and then allow the Department of Education to have a really strong push and policy so that, as you said, each respective district can make that. But, again, that's speaking up and standing up for our children. And this is an aside, too, for the Department of Education. They have a strong policy right now on financial education. We should have that codified in the state for our children.
So that every school in the
skill.
state is teaching financial literacy starting at whatever, 7th grade, 9th grade, whatever the number is.
Have a credit before they graduate. At least we've given them some tools that they don't currently have that's required. It's just significant in that regard.
1 minute left. If I looked at the to-do list on a whiteboard in your office, what is the number one thing at the top?
Well, certainly we're protecting our victims.
Okay.
We've got a lot of crime that happens not only in our state and our country, but how can we protect our victims? And it ranges from so many different areas. Certainly, as our children are our top priority.
Sure.
And so our child exploitation, human trafficking, how do we help those victims? How do we get these predators off the street that are grooming and trying to get our children and leverage them into these different areas? So we've got some requests for some laws there too, to obtain some more monies for our children that are victims. Quite across the board. Yeah.
A lot on the docket. I will end with you just like I did with Commissioner Gibson earlier today. If I handed you a crystal ball and you looked into it 3 years from now, what would you be doing?
Oh, well, in 3 years, I love being the Attorney General, so we'll be pushing very hard right now to continue to protect and serve the people of the state of Mississippi.
A lot going on, and a busy office indeed. Always appreciate the time. So good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is the Gallo Radio Show, Super Talk Mississippi. We'll talk education in the state coming up next.